morning. So thank you for having me. I mean, this is obviously this time of year, right? This bubbles up to the surface again. We're about to enter our 19th year after the 9/11 event, and a lot has happened to me in a 19 years since. But on that day, when it happened, I was actually an EMT, and I was working at the academy as an instructor. I was pretty much one of the lead instructors for the EMT programs. So for EMS and FDNY, we train our own. So, every 3 years, an EMS member has to recertify in their certification. So I was leading one of the classes. We were in the classroom. We were doing some skills, some labs, and we hear that a plane just flew into the World Trade Center. Immediately we thought, this must be an accident. Maybe somebody was just, maybe it's a Cessna, it's something small. Somebody, didn't get their, I guess their navigation correct. They are pretty tall buildings. So we all kind of rushed to the television to see what's going on. And we were shocked to find that this was a commercial airplane. And we still at that point thought, this is an accident. There was a lot of speculation, through the news as to whether this was on purpose or an accident. And, shortly after the coverage, we see the second plane hit the building. And at that point, we knew, this was not an accident. This is just not something that could happen accidentally. We were shook. This was unbelievable for us. But in a very short period of time after that, we had to gather who we were at that point. We weren't just citizens sitting at home watching television and going, oh my God, can you imagine? Can you believe that this happened? We were a building full of EMS first responders. And we had at that point recognized that we were going to get mobilized and we had to go down there. So now we start the process of mobilizing this entire academy, students, instructors, everybody, because everybody who comes through the academy at that point is already certified. So they're there for recertification. So they're all prepared to go to work at any time. So one of the rules we have at the academy is when you go for training, you have to have all your equipment with you. So, in circumstances like this one, if we had to leave the academy and go to work, we could. So now, everybody's scrambling, everybody's running to their cars, they're all getting their equipment out of their trunks, everybody, is coming back. We're trying to figure out how we're gonna, make everybody accounted for. So we have them, in different groups. We have instructors overseeing different groups, and we're just really trying to get everybody in line so that we can go down to the scene. And clearly we had an entire building full of people, rescuers, the instructors, the students. We don't have enough ambulances for everybody. So, now we have to figure out how are we going to get everybody down there. And at the base of the fort, we run our EMS Academy out of Fort Totten. At the base of the fort is a MTA hub for buses. So, one of our officers at that point, like I said, I was an EMT. So one of the officers at that point goes down to the hub down there and commandeers city buses. So now we have these multiple city buses that are brought up to the academy. We have multiple buildings on the fort that we have to now bring everybody to a center point and account for them and put them on buses. So now we're in this convoy of buses, and we're all scared, right? We're all just scared. We don't know what's happening. We know this is the most terrible thing that we've seen, and you can imagine, all the people that are in that building now trying to get out, and there's fire, there's smoke, there's a plane in the building. We have a lot in front of us when we get down there, being first responders, particularly in a medical event, which this is, right? We expect that there's going to be a lot of, patients. So we're on the highway, we're in a convoy. At the beginning of the convoy and at the end of the convoy are two fire department cars. So they're kind of sandwiching the MTA buses that are carrying us all. And it was the most eerie thing. I remember being on the highway, leaving the academy and going down to Manhattan. And you get a really good view from there of Manhattan. And you see it's right on the other side of the tunnel. And like all the cars just come to a dead stop. And they're just, people are out on the highway just watching, you know, these buildings. And I remember our chief, I'm pretty sure it was our chief anyway, he was in the front car getting out on a highway and like yelling at the cars, yelling at people to get out of the way because we needed to get through. So, you know, we're on the highway, we're on our way down there, and all of a sudden the first tower falls. Like we had no idea, like no, at least as far as I'm concerned, the people around me, we had no inkling that this building was going to fall. It wasn't even a possibility. We just knew we were going to a damaged building, and you know, but the building falls, and we see this from the highway, and everybody just is at a dead stop, and everybody is stunned, and they're yelling, you know, get out of the way. We have to get down there. And finally we make it through, and I think everybody was just silent. Like they were just like, oh my God. Because, you know, the thing that goes into your head now is, man, if that happened to the first building, we got another building standing. So we finally get down, and the buses are down there. And then all of a sudden, the second building comes down, right? So we're now there, we're enveloped in this dust and dirt and smoke and all the other stuff. And we're inside the bus. So, you know, we are still somewhat safe. But it is clear that what we thought we were going into and what we are in now are two different things. So, you know, we get down there after a while, we were able to unload the bus. Now we have two buildings down. We go into a staging location, and me being one of the lead instructors, I got one of the first assignments, and they send me down to something that's called forward triage. So forward triage is at the scene and where the thing is happening, generally as close to the scene as possible. And my job and my team's job is to triage the patients there and look for critical patients. It was not very long before we figured out there was nobody to triage. So my team turned into a morgue. There was just nobody to triage. So we set up in a building that was right at the pit, right at the base of the pit. I believe it was the Amex building, if I remember correctly, but it was a glass building, and it was still standing, and it was right at the pit of you know, these two mangled messes of steel. And our job was to pull people out and try to identify whether they were male or female, or, you know, fire department or not. You know, we lost 343 people that day. So our job was to just keep sorting, keep pulling, you know, whatever we could get a handle on. You know, not everybody was in one piece, you know, so we did that, and that lasted for about, I would say, minimum 18 hours. You know, we were down there just doing that. And at some point during that time period, a soldier comes running in, right? I guess it was like a National Guard or an Army guy who was in fatigues. You know, there was a lot of people down at the scene at that point, right? And he comes running in the building, you know, you got to get out of here. This building's coming down. You got to get out, right? And now, of course, we're freaking out because we know that anything could fall on our heads right now, right? We just saw two buildings that I've known my entire life are now in a mangled mess. So anything is possible at this point. So we got to run out. And some of the people in my team, in my group, were so freaked out that they were actually trying to grab some of the deceased and, you know, pulled them out with us. And, we had to be like, leave them, drop them, let's go, we got to run. And, we ran out of there. And then a little while later, they come back and say, well, this building is stable. It definitely screws with your head. I will tell you that. So we go back in and we're doing our thing. So our team was really about more just getting these folks either identified in some way, even if it just meant, this is a male or this is a female. And we did come across our own, they were, some of them were still in bunker gear. So we were able to identify some of those folks. So that lasted, for at least 18 hours. I remember back then, we didn't have the same level of communication that we have now. So, there were still beepers, right? People were still carrying pagers. There weren't any real cell phones. Like, not everybody had cell phones. I think the Nextel was like the only thing that was working, and hardly anybody had that, because when the buildings came down, so did the antenna. So there was like no communication, no cell phone communications. And we didn't have any radios, right? Because we had an entire building full of EMS people that got sent down there. We didn't have enough equipment and radios for everybody. So there was really no way to communicate. That was one of the problems that we ran across. So my family at this point, I'm down there for 18 hours plus 24 hours at this point. And, I went to work and I just didn't come home. That's all they knew. And I had a 3-year-old and a 14-year-old. And, I find out later on that because I didn't have a radio, they had done a radio roll call, and I didn't have a radio. So I was on the missing in action list. Our family started calling the fire department looking for information because nobody knew anything. Like, we all just went to work and nobody has come home since, right? So, I know my family was informed that I was missing in action, and the whole time I was actually working. Thankfully, I was okay. So, I remember after about, I got to tell you, I feel like it was about 18 hours. It could have been even longer because it was a nonstop, pulling people and trying to identify them. But I find my way up to the staging location, which is a few blocks up where the college is. And by then, New Yorkers had started to donate, blankets. There were big hefty bags full of blankets and, towels and sheets and all types of stuff. And I have never, ever felt the level of exhaustion that I had that moment. And I remember just looking at one of the hefty bags and grabbing a blanket and laying on a concrete, and it started raining. And I wrapped myself in a blanket on the concrete, and I slept for about an hour or so out in the street. I just couldn't, my body was not having it anymore, because I'd been there for 18 hours, but I had been at work for, hours since. So it was a long time. So I slept for about an hour, and then I went back down and, did it again for another, day or so. So by the time I decided, it was time for me to go home, there was no transportation. It was like we got dropped down there, but that was it. There was no organized way to account for us clearly. Everybody was kind of, whether you had a radio, you didn't have a radio, there's a lot of activity going on. So there was no way to get home, right? There was nothing there that was ready for me to take me home. So I end up hitchhiking on the West Side Highway, and I think it was another rescuer from maybe another company or agency or something, or a construction worker, somebody who was down there helping. And they drove me up to the Bronx, and from the Bronx, I hitchhiked. I got another car, to take me directly to my daughter's school, because I've been gone for a couple of days now. So I wanted her to know that I was okay. So went straight to her school. She was happy to see me, of course, and I was happy to see her. And then we went home, and, I took a shower. It was just disgusting. and slept for a few hours, and then, got back up and went back down. And I did that for about a month. I was down there, day and night, sleeping for an hour or two in between, just trying to identify people. And it was starting to develop now. After the first week or so, or a couple of weeks, it started to get a little bit more organized. So things were being removed, and so it was really starting to develop as an MCI, as a multiple casualty incident. I guess even though there weren't anybody there for us to treat, we still had a lot of rescuers there. So my job was to sit in what we call a gator, which is like a golf cart, right? And now I'm sitting with my partner in this vehicle, and it doesn't move very quickly, but I'm sitting at the base of the Liberty Hotel, or Liberty building, and the Millennial. I think there's like the two buildings that right next door to each other, the Liberty Tower, that's what it was. And I'm sitting at the base. So because there was no communication, our job was to keep our eyes on the pit, right? Which is what they called that, I guess, center location where all the building debris was. And as they were starting to remove it, if they found a body or they found anything, they would call for us, and then we would drive in and collect, the person or the body part or whatever, and then, take it to the location, the morgue. So now I'm sitting at this location, and the rule was if you heard the air horn go off 3 times, there was danger, right? So you needed to just be very aware. You couldn't sit there and not pay attention. So the air horn goes off for 3 times. And now people start, where I'm sitting, right? People start running. They're being told that the Liberty Tower is coming down, right? And everything was a little bit unstable, and, there was damage to some of the other buildings. So now I'm sitting in this vehicle, and people start running for their lives. And I start driving this vehicle. Me and my partner were driving this vehicle away from there. And people are running past me. And I'm driving this vehicle. So, at some point I decide this vehicle doesn't move as fast as I can move. And we jump out of the vehicle and we start running. We just leave the vehicle there. We start running. And then again, later on, they'll be like, no, everything's okay. The building's stable. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I ran for my life while I was down here, because the fear is just palpable. The things that you thought were not possible are sitting right in front of you right now. These buildings were a symbol of Manhattan. I grew up with these. These were always our skyline. These are the things as a kid that, we would look up at and say, oh my God, look how big this is. So, the fact that they're laying in front of us meant that anything goes. So, it wasn't funny then, I will tell you. I mean, I could chuckle about me jumping out of this gator and running. I think I ran to the Brooklyn Bridge. I was so scared. But, now I could chuckle, but before it was not funny. I thought, we're all going to die, So, we just go through this thing, at least for me. I'm there every single day for most of the day, for at least a month. And then I have to get back to the academy. It's about that time where we have to start to put our pieces back together, right? So we have to start to get our classes back up and running and keep our people certified. And, so we go back to work there. So, that's pretty much, my story of being down there. I could tell you that over the 19 years, I've had a tremendous 19 years since that event. I'm coming up on 30 years now, but I've had a tremendous career. And I find myself now as the chief of EMS, and that's the highest ranking officer in EMS. So, now I'm faced with the story. That's all I have. And the people that are coming into the system were either babies or not even born, So this is just really a story to them. So one of the things that I did when I was the chief of training was all of our EMS Proby classes go for a trip down to the World Trade Center site, and I go with them. And this, really lens to never forget, right? And the way to never forget is to continue to tell the story of the sacrifice that people made down there. Certainly the supreme sacrifice, and the supreme sacrifice that people continue to make. We've continued to lose people since that day. But all of our probationary EMS members now take a trip while they're at the EMS Academy down to the World Trade Center. And I go with them. And I went with them personally when I was the chief of training, and I still go with them personally now that I'm the chief of EMS. And we go down there, and we have a formation, we line up, we pay respect, we have a little ceremony of bagpipes, we lay a wreath, and then the class gets to go into the museum without any public in there. It's a prearranged thing. And they get a video presentation on how EMS and the FDNY contributed to that day. And then they get to walk around the museum and really absorb, right? Really absorb and take it in. And I have to say, it changes them, because it goes from something that they heard, a story that maybe their parent told them or they heard when they came to the FDNY. And it turns that from a story into something very real. And I think they can acknowledge the souls that are represented when we're standing on that ground. So, that's something that as long as I'm the chief of EMS, all of our EMS classes will continue to do. And I'll continue to go with them. In fact, it's so strange. Today was the day that the current class was scheduled to go down there, but because of this COVID, this pandemic, this will be the first class since I started this that will not be able to go to the World Trade Center today. So it's odd that we're having this conversation on the day that they should be there, and I should be there with them, but we'll have to make that up at some other point. So, we have to just continue to tell these stories. And my job as a chief of EMS is to make sure that these EMS members who have never seen anything on this scale are ready and prepared to respond to the worst of the worst. And after what I've just seen with this pandemic, I could tell you that they are ready. They've done a terrific job. And even without having experience, with seeing things of this level, they were able to rely on their training and just fall back on their commitment and dedication and compassion and professionalism and willingness to put their lives in a line for someone else to live. So I'm exceptionally proud of them. And I always will be. Yeah.
At what point were you able to get to your family word at all that you were safe, or was the first time they realized you were safe when you saw them?
Yeah, the first time they realized it when I saw them. At that point, they hadn't gotten any information. The only information they got was that I was on the missing in action list, but that wasn't a guarantee that something had happened to me, but it wasn't a guarantee that nothing had happened to me. So when I went to my daughter's school, that was the first time that, they got news that I was okay.
That must have been one emotional moment.
Yeah, it was super emotional. The entire school welcomed me. They stopped classes. Yeah, I was still covered in dirt, mind you. I had gone straight from, being down there several days, pulling people out of rubble, to going directly to my kid's school. So, I'm still very contaminated. I guess I shouldn't have went there first, but I needed her to know that I was okay. So, I got there right around lunchtime. So, the school, she had gone to a Catholic school, and they just kind of shut down all the classes. They came out and greeted me, and they said a prayer for all the people down there, and so she was very happy to see me. And I tell you, when she was a kid, she said, "My mom will never be there alone again." And she joined the fire department. she's not with the fire department anymore, but she joined the fire department. So she was an EMT with the fire department for, I think a little bit more than 3 years. And her whole, drive was the day that I went there. And she said, I'll be there too.
You see a lot working as an EMS worker, but not what you saw that day, not the dead, not the body parts. How do you deal with that? Do you have PTSD? You must in some way.
Yeah, I tell you, I think, everybody has a little something. Even now, when I go down there, I could smell it. I can smell it as though it was the day I was there. It's the weirdest thing. It's just, I know the smell is not there, but for me it is. I've been pretty fortunate, and been able to really kind of navigate through this, but it's a part of me. There have been people who have far, more problems as far as post-traumatic stress than I have had, luckily, but I think, that really just comes down to, I guess, my sense of purpose. I'm able to rationalize why I was there. And although it's terrible and the things that we see are terrible, it takes a group of people to be able to see the terrible things to help people live, right? So I've been able to rationalize it that way, but I know it's there because I smell it, so that is at least one level of PTSD that exists. But, thankfully I've been able to get myself through it.
Not a single person I have talked to who was there experiencing this, not a single person was unscathed medically, and everyone kind of downplays their own because in the scheme of things, we've lost so many. But yeah. Can you share the health impact this has had on your own physical health?
Yeah, I've had some difficulty from it, with my GI system and some other things. I'm on some medication for it. But again, I think I understand why, somebody would downplay it. Is, we're lucky to have our lives, right? And we have lost over 270 people. I think we might be up to, let me see, I don't even know, let me see where we are, but 226.
And we're talking just FDNY. There have been so many more, the NYPD.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Civilians.
Just FDNY. Right. We've lost, 226 additional people. We lost 343, and then now 226. And many of those people were my friends, people that I was there with, sitting next to. So, if I have a little, medical problem that I have to be treated for, I'm still here to be treated for it. I'm still here to be able to take medication. And, I think we all wake up with that, like, is today my day kind of feeling. It's like, is today the day that I become part of that number? So it makes you see things a little bit different. Like, I'll tell you, I don't sweat the little things anymore. The things that you fight about in your house that are stupid, the who said what to what and what bill is late and what, I do not sweat the little things at all. Like, I spend the majority of my day living like tomorrow is my turn to be part of that number. And I think, we have an obligation to have as positive an impact on the world and the people around us as we possibly can. And that's how you live forever, right? When it is my turn, when I am part of that number, I want people to say, look, she did good by us, So you're not going to find anybody who is going to pump up their own medical issues when we're just so grateful to still be here every day, right?
Right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. Unless you have any additional questions, I think that's a pretty comprehensive accounting of my experience, and now we're off to a pandemic, which is, again, is is, I guess, takes first place now and the craziest thing I've ever seen in my career. So, we're still in the midst of it and committed to saving as many lives as we can. And, there's more trouble to come. We have a deficit in the city, and, there's lots of challenges coming our way. So we're just going to keep on keeping on. And you should too, Chief.
And I will. And thank you so much. Thank you for being a friend too. I'm so honored to call you my
Yes,
friend.
my
Thank
pleasure.